Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Transcend. I'm yours truly, Dr. Earl B. Hall, and today we have an amazing special guest. We have basically an amazing author, and I want to call you doctor because it's like that's your title. It's like Dr. Teresa A. Smith. She's the author of Stronger: How Overcoming Life's Adversities Can Push You Into Your Purpose. And that's going to be the first thing we dive into. But I first want to welcome you and thank you so much for taking time to be here with us today.
Thank you, Earl. I'm so happy to be with you.
Man, Dr. Taz, and I was going to ask you where that came from, but those are your initials, Teresa A. Smith. It's like, man, I can't use that. My initials are EBH. So, I mean, I can't even come up with a cool thing like that. But when you talk in your book, and the title really does sum it up, overcoming life's adversities can push you into your purpose. And one of the things that I've found, and I want to ask you if you found this, some of the major things that people face in life that they think are the hardest thing to deal with is actually the thing they're put here on the planet to help other people heal through. Have you found that?
Oh, absolutely. Ever since I was a little girl, people talk to me, and I write about it a little bit in the book. I can remember being in middle school, and my classmates were telling me about rape. One classmate, her parents were divorcing, and this was back in the 70s. And the young lady, she went to live with her father. She didn't stay with her mother.
Okay.
At the time, I was like, okay, this is interesting. People just share things with you. And I spent a lot of time around older people, so they were sharing things with me. But what I found was that, I was sort of walking in my purpose then, but I didn't truly understand at that age why some of the things that I encountered as far as the incest and then losing my sight in middle school, why that was so significant for what I was to do later in life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You let these things, as you were just speaking, and I think to other people it's amazing too, that you just let all of that just roll off of you like it was nothing to even say. And I know it has not always been that way. At least I hope it hasn't always been that way, because then I would really be in a tough spot because, usually when we're going through those things, especially at a younger age, we don't understand the whys or the, hows or wherefores and all this. We just know we're going through something that is traumatic without even realizing how it's going to affect us at 23,
Yes.
at 37. At 48, and these things that aren't dealt with I talk with people every day about these certain life situations, whether it's that or, business development or just trying to figure out life in general. And one of the first things I tell people is, look, if we can't transmute what has happened to you before, how are we going to build the future you want? Because your future is based on your past at this point, and there's no way you can create something new. How have your conversations been with people that have, I know you have Facebook and other places like that, but what's the discussions been like with you, with people that have gone through and read your book and kind of looked at it through their own lens?
It's interesting, Earl. A lot of people, I remember one person said, oh, I need therapy now. And I don't know if it was because she wasn't expecting my book to be so candid, or because she knew me, that she just could not imagine that that was my existence.
Mm-hmm.
But as you stated, it's a part of who I am. And I think that my hope is that through my platform, people are understanding it's okay to have a past, because as you said earlier, the past really defines your future. And because our past, you can't escape it. Even if you do drugs, you do men, you do women, whatever you do, food, whatever it is, you don't escape your past. It's in your DNA. And so to me, as soon as you can begin to embrace it, that's where true healing begins. But that's a concept that's sort of foreign still, because people don't want to focus on, and I should use the word focus, but they don't want to examine the implications of their past and how that then interacts with every part of their being, from work to personal relationships. Their whole way of seeing the world, their worldview basically is shaped from their past, and people don't want to deal with that.
It's interesting too, from a standpoint, especially in our community, the African American community, we don't do therapy. So many times it's not because, and I think one of the things that is a major problem in our community is that those things that happen, whether it be rape, incest, whatever it is, we don't talk about them. We cover them up. We don't mention it. It's not something we talk about in our family. We don't do that. How have you been able or what assisted you and helped you to break that, to start a new paradigm?
Well, for me, I come from that same background as most African Americans, and I talk about it in the book. My mother, I talked with her. Well, I told both of my parents when I was little that what had happened and who had victimized me,
Mhm.
but my father never addressed it. He still doesn't say a word about it. But what I've come to understand, which I think is really important, is that we have to understand that people approach whatever the situation is based upon their experiences
Yeah,
and their ability to manage.
yeah.
But when I was younger, I was very hurt by that. And not to say that it still doesn't get me sometimes now, it does, but I understand he just can't. So my healing can't be tied to his ability to acknowledge or say, I'm sorry that this happened to you. So I have to shift. Now, with my mom, I've also come to understand through this piece that I just wrote for a new book that she also operated from her perspective,
Mhm.
but she didn't know what to do. She
Yeah.
did what she knew to do, but she really didn't know how to give me what I needed. I read something, or either I heard something, it could have been yours recently, that you have to, whatever it is that you're needing, you have to be that for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yep.
Was that you this morning? So
Yep.
you have to be that. And I think that's a concept that's hard for people to understand. So when you ask me how, why, I became that for myself. But I will still tell you, I've often said to my mom more so than anybody, I wish the way that I champion other people, I had that external person that
Hmm.
could pour into me, because I get so depleted pouring into myself and then other people. But
Yeah.
it's a conscious decision. I've always been about being the best that I could be. I'm very analytical. And so once the emotional outburst didn't get me what I wanted, then it's
Mhm.
like, okay, you want to survive this. So what's going to be your plan? And so I just approached it from that perspective. But certainly, I can
You knew
remember
that it had to come from within.
exactly. It's an innate
Yeah.
thing. It's
Hmm.
innate. And I worked in gastroenterology in another life. And one of the GI doctors was a psychiatrist also.
Mm.
And so he was doing research. So I asked him one day, why is it that some people basically you can have two people have the same experiences. One person doesn't do well and the other person fares very well. And
Hmm.
that's what he said to me, it's innate. Well, I knew he meant inborn, but then as I got older, because I was still in my early 20s,
Okay.
I'm like, what is he talking about? Then I began to understand it's that thing that dwells on the inside.
Hmm.
It's your DNA, it's your experiences, but it's something on the inside that helps you to make that shift. And so that's what I was able to do.
It's so interesting what you're talking about with the whole thing with being an eight. I mean, science has pretty much proven this thing about our DNA and that we carry things from generations ago. I mean, there was a study done on cows, of all things, where they would shock a cow. Give basically with a fence, they would let them know, they push them against the fence, and so the cow would not go near the fence.
Mhm.
For 7 generations of things spawned from that cow, they didn't go to that fence. They had never touched it, but they would not get close to the fence for 7 generations. They knew there was something there. And so when that happens to us as human beings, being the most sophisticated thing on the planet,
Yes.
and we don't realize these deep seated things that are within us are there. And sometimes we just don't even know why. It was interesting, even some of the things that you wrote about, like back from slavery and the things that African Americans deal with today that, people will say, oh, just get over it. And it's like, slavery was not that long ago,
Yes.
and I mean, my great grandmother, I knew
Uh-huh.
her grandmother was a slave.
Yes.
I mean, so this is not that far removed, and there's things and there's hurts. Can you speak a little bit up to that?
I think that when I hear you talk about the cows, it explains some of the hurt and responses I think we get from folks. Because I look at generational curses. And for
Hmm.
me, when you don't address, like with me, I question, was there someone else in my lineage who was molested?
Hmm.
Because it appeared that the family they just don't want to address it. But as you say, it's in the DNA.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it comes from the slavery and how we were socialized at that time and just came down through the lineage, or if it has to do with just that fear
Mm.
that if we bear our quote unquote dirty linen, then we lose a footing from general society, or we prove what general society thinks of African Americans. I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah.
because I think that we're protecting we're protecting the race, but we're sacrificing the child or whomever so that things look good. And I wonder if that comes from the fallout of slavery, that we've got to be strong, we've got to be the American dream. So it's like there's no problems,
Mhm.
particularly problems of that nature.
Yeah. And I mean, not having dealt with, or if people have not dealt with those, what you describe as generational curses and the stuff that's in our DNA, so many times we're looking for people outside of ourselves to solve problems for us that we need to actually solve internally to be able to fix. Because if you don't believe or have an understanding that you have value,
Mhm.
that you have worth,
Yeah.
that you have something, you're here for a purpose, and there's something special about you just because you're a human being and you're looking for validation outside. That's a dangerous slavery to be in. And what I mean by that, if your value has to come from someone else,
Yes.
that's slavery.
Manifesting the life you desire is your birthright. You have the power within to create the reality you want to live in. In my free 5-day challenge called Quantum Manifestation Alignment, QMA for short, you will learn the tools to transmute your past, get rid of self-limiting beliefs, and discover the power that you have within to manifest the life you deserve. Register for the free QMA 5-day challenge at www.drerbhall.com/QMA 5-day challenge.
If your justification for being or having your own value is something that is external and is not internal, you are a slave to everyone else to give you what you should be giving yourself.
Yeah, it's hearing you say it and then use that term, most people wouldn't realize that that's slavery. Or
Mhm.
I would say that they're in bondage. They don't realize that they're still in bondage.
Mhm.
And in the book, I think I say, I don't measure my success by someone else's barometer, because when you do that, then you perpetuate what is. Because
Yeah.
if I don't think I measure up to them, then even though I've had a success, I
Yeah.
downgrade my success.
Yeah.
So I think that this idea of slavery, being quote unquote in prison, being held back, I think
Mhm.
the idea of the crab syndrome. And then there's one that I've heard my father talk about. You may have never heard this, the Willie Lynch syndrome.
No, I haven't.
Oh, no, don't have me try to explain it. But you do some research, because I
Okay,
can't
the
really
Willie
explain
Lynch syndrome. Everyone, we
Willie
need to
Lynch.
research this.
Yeah. Because I think some people believe that some of our issues are because of what happened with him. And it could be a little bit, but I think also it's our socialization, it's our DNA, and it's our, how do I want to say this? I don't think sometimes we're as perceptive as we think we are,
Mm.
as far as how our world is shifting and the subtle things that are in place that impact our progression.
Mhm.
So like when you talk about, and I talk about using other people's views as a way to measure my success,
Right.
and that is slavery, that's subtle. Now we talk about other forms of slavery, but we
Mhm.
don't realize that that's slavery. And
Yeah.
this particular one is probably more prevalent than any of the forms of
Yeah.
slavery.
It was so interesting. Even when I was reading your book and you were talking about Maya Angelou and Tupac Shakur, I never knew that story. In basically reducing Tupac to tears. Don't you know your value? Don't you know how important you are? And I think, and I'm not gonna give spoiler alert, but spoiler alert. I mean, it's like you got to read this. You got to read this book. You know, um, when I look at the things that you started writing about, and this is towards the end of the book, where you were talking about the elected officials not showing basically the proper etiquette, or basically being an example to the people that they were there to serve. And you talked about the pastors and the things of that nature. There's two parts to this question, because I believe that is completely true, where so many people are looking to leadership to show them the way, and then so many fall. I mean, it's too many people. Bill Cosby. I mean, all these different, different scenarios, pastor after pastor of big churches and things of that nature. What is the real thing with the leadership and the people? And are we putting too much responsibility on the leadership and not enough on the people to be leaders and not sheeple?
Well, I think you hit it. For me, not spoiler alert, but as it relates to the pastor, I don't know if I wrote this in the book, but I remember him saying once from the pulpit, "Do as I say and not as I do."
Ooh.
I was a young girl. I probably was in middle school then. It was before the incident. And I remember saying to my mama, if what he is saying is so good, why doesn't he do that? Why would you have said that?
You're not supposed to ask that, girl.
I know I was precocious, and it probably went over everybody else's head, but I'm sitting there, I'm listening, and I'm thinking, if it's so good, why would you not do that? But then there was always chatter about different things. But what I think is that I think people are so desperate, in lack of a better word, but I think that's really what it is. They're so desperate for something to anchor them that they look to leadership to do it. And even if the person is stepping out of line because they are the leader, because they are a person of faith, then I think people become victimized by that. Thank God I was not, because I'm like, why are you, that's wrong. You shouldn't say that to me.
Right.
But I think other people, because they also want the approval, because those are the power brokers in our community. We can't forget that.
Right.
What happened with me is not, an isolated thing. I mean, I'm sure that, well, I'm not sure. I know there are people who are in relationships with the pastors of the church. We see it all the time, not just the mega churches.
It's
in
a
the
joke now.
churches.
It's
Open
it's
now.
a joke now.
It's always been there. And I think that we look to them, because you got to go back to slavery. Faith drove us. It kept us motivated to get out of slavery. So we came together through religion. So now that we're in a different time, different century, and things are having to shift, that DNA says that our teachers are our pillars of the community. If the teacher says it, it's got to be true. If the pastor says it, it has to be true. Whatever they say, you have to do it. And we are not taught, and DNA, as we said, plays a part, to look inward to be leaders and to think for ourselves, because you're going to get pushback. Because anytime you go against the grain, people don't like it. And so then they paint you as the negative person or the bad
Because you're challenging their authority. You're challenging their leadership, and that's that ego mind anyway with that. So if there was one thing that you completely know within yourself now that you wish everyone else knew, what is it?
That I know now. I always knew that there was a God, because I would not have made it without him. Even with my little short story that's coming out next month, I talk a little bit about it. I would not have made it. I know him. I know him better now. I knew him then. I knew he kept me, but now I see it so clearly. Even with things that have transpired today, it's like, oh, wait a minute. It's not supposed to be that difficult. What are you telling me? What are you trying to show me? And now I've seen it. Since what happened earlier, I saw what he was trying to show me and what he wanted me to do. If I had known that the earlier self, I would have saved myself a lot of grief. I wouldn't have been begging him. I wouldn't have been crying at night asking him why. Because for me, I wanted to know why. It's a one word question, but why?
Yeah.
Because I didn't do anything. I was a good person. I did all the right things. Why? And why it happened, why my family could not give me the support that I needed. Why? It means so much to me. Why? And I understand the why now. and I understand. It's like the footprints in the sand. He was carrying me the whole
Whole
time.
time.
So
Yeah.
I just didn't understand it because I was so young. And then I was young in my faith, and I got older. I was still young in my faith.
Mhm.
But that is so important. And I wish that I could have other people to see that, because we're man. So we look for an answer. It's
Mhm.
just like, we're in the instantaneous world now. If I press a button and it doesn't immediately do something,
Oh, we
even now
frustrated.
I've gotten like,
Yeah.
something wrong. Well, you got to give it a second, And it's like, we think it's going to happen like that. It doesn't. But
Mhm.
he's got us. But to know that, and to know that you know that you know that you know it,
Yeah, girl.
you know,
Yeah.
if people don't understand that. But I had a fourth grade teacher, and I know a friend of mine said, "You just talk so much." But when I talk about certain things, I get excited.
Yes.
I had a fourth grade teacher, Miss Vita Mae Flowers, and she said,
Mita May. I already know she was. I already know she was something else. Mita
"Oh
May.
yeah, she
All
was."
right.
She said, "It's bad to not know that you don't know that you don't know."
Mm.
And I didn't understand, but I never forgot that. But now I understand.
Yeah.
And I see how we don't know that we don't know that we don't know. And that's it. I didn't know that I didn't know it, but I know it now. And if I could go back and tell that little girl who used to cry at night,
Mm-hmm.
who felt so isolated and so alone, that it's going to be okay. He got you. You just got to go through it,
Yeah.
because it's already done.
It's already done.
She would be happy. She wouldn't understand it, but she'd be happy.
Well, everybody, I hope you got that. It's already done. Well, my guest today, thank you so much, Dr. Teresa Teresa Smith. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure that you do go and grab the book, Stronger: How to Overcome Life's Adversities Can Push You Into Your Purpose. How overcoming life's adversities can push you into your purpose. And that is so true. Dr. Taz, how can people stay connected with you, and where should they go to link up more with you? Because we know we can get your book on Amazon.
Absolutely. The best thing to do is go to my website, www.askdrtaz.com, ASKDRTAS.com, Taz.com, and I've got a link to all my social media platforms. And I love talking to individuals, so please reach out to me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Taz, for being here with me today. I definitely have enjoyed this conversation with you, and I know people will be enjoying this immensely for days and weeks and years to come, because it'll be on internet forever at this point, after we've been gone and on to glory and everywhere else. So,
So true.
so thank you for being here, and thank you everyone for tuning in today to Transcend with yours truly, Dr. Earl B. Hall, and we'll see you on the next episode.